Item 5.1, which is on page 3 of our agenda, and this is the Coasters Car Club request to have the car show for the next 3 years. Council, you've had a chance to read this. Don't know that we need any discussion. Yes, please, Councillor. Sorry, I meant any reports from staff. So Councillor Bell and then Councillor Inkster, please.
Yes, through the chair, just a couple of questions in terms of the agreement. There's been a history of the agreement, multi-year agreement, and then 2 consecutive 1-year agreements, and now they want to go back to a 3-year agreement, as I understand it. I just wondered if there's any rationale behind the varying agreement terms, or is it just something they want to work towards? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Please, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My understanding from our community service coordinator is that the car club itself wasn't sure if it was going to continue for the further 3 years when they had renewed for the 1-year period. At this time, they have requested a 3-year term.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one more question?
I'll just add to that. Yes,
Oh,
it's very good
thank you.
news because you reminded me 2 years ago, they were very concerned about the volunteers that they did or didn't have available to. It takes a lot of work to put this on. So I take it as very good news that they're looking for 3 years. There's a level of optimism that's pretty good.
Great.
So
Okay.
please, then a follow-up.
Thank you. The other question I was just wondering, I'm very supportive of these events. I mean, any event that brings, all ages to the downtown core, of course, meets one of our strategic objectives, which is fostering a vibrant downtown core. I just want to ask staff and if there's any concerns around doing a 3-year agreement with some of the development plans we have in process on Inlet Avenue, Shorncliffe. I know they're not necessarily on the main street, but just want to know in terms of any concerns around traffic, et cetera, if we go into a 3-year term.
Okay. Mr. Yates, in absence, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Inkster?
Thank you. This proposal is a standard proposal. It's predictable and it's historically relevant for the District of Sechelt. So I will move the recommendation on page 3.
Very good. A second. Any further discussion? Yes, please.
Yes,
Councillor
thank you,
McLaughlin.
through the chair. I mean, I'm not really sure it's in the core. I think it's more in the village. But it is a very nice event normally on a beautiful summer day, but I'm just concerned about perhaps climate issues and extreme heat and dryness and making a commitment to go 3 years. I think it would be better to go 1 year at a time. And perhaps to build in some kind of clause that if we have to say that it's not really possibly safe, I don't know if the fire department would be able to make a call on that, but dry grass and cars and people, even people smoking, it makes us very nervous in the village when we get into these extreme hot times. So I am kind of worried about it. I don't see anything in this agreement to protect us in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would suggest that any of those concerns are real, whether we do 1 year or 2 or 3. I think we have to be mindful, and I certainly agree with you. The risk of fire is a concern this summer, as well as the next 2 or 3. The security that it gives the club, I can tell you from my own experience organizing events, is that it allows people to plan and make decisions that maybe you can buy something, you can afford to buy something because you're going to use it for 3 years rather than just buy it and hope maybe you won't get another year. So, Councillor Toth, please.
Thank you. Yeah, in my experience as an event organizer as well, doing 1,000-person events, it's up to us as event organizers to ensure that the event that we're going to be hosting and having is safe for people to attend. During the early days of COVID, all those years ago, the event that I host was actually the very first scouting event that we decided to cancel because of COVID restrictions that were coming. And it's one of those decisions that we didn't make lightly, and we technically had the approval to proceed with, but we knew that it wouldn't be responsible to do so. And so I think that's incumbent on event organizers to make sure that their event is safe for the public to attend. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I see two microphones on, but I have a feeling there. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed, Councillor McLaughlin is opposed, the motion carries. I think that gives staff what you need to proceed to sign, right? We have the lease agreement, but do we actually seal agreements anymore? Look who's coming to join us, Mr. Hall, for item 5.2, starting on page 12. And this is for a temporary use permit. Mr. Hall, anything you want to, actually, should we follow procedure? Does anybody want to make a motion at this point? Okay, is there a seconder? The motion being as presented? Okay, thank you. Okay, so discussion? Yes, please. Councillor Shepherd.
Two questions regarding the temporary use permits. How is both sound controlled if there's construction sort of preparation going on? Is it going to bother the nearby residents? And second issue is lighting. Are there any bylaws in terms of controlling temporary lighting that's being put up on the site? Thank you.
Great. Now we'll introduce Mr. Hall. Do you want to respond to those?
Sure, I can respond to that. Certainly the noise bylaw that's already in place applies to this situation. So that will regulate noise. The temporary use permit doesn't propose any exemptions or anything different to the noise bylaw regulations as they are now. There is nothing specific in the TUP proposed at this time for lighting, but that is something we could certainly incorporate a specific provision to address concerns around lighting in terms of proposing or requiring all lighting to be, dark sky compliant, downcast, not impact neighboring properties. I don't think there's much lighting proposed, but that's certainly something we can express in the TUP itself.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, just to
Yeah.
follow up, 2 points on that. Firstly, the town's noise bylaw has no sort of decibel control. So seeing that we have a noise bylaw doesn't really answer the question. On the second point on lighting, that's great. I'd love or ask staff to include something in that license, especially on lighting. But I think we have to go more than, we have to ask the same thing for noise as well. Thanks.
And to clarify, our noise bylaw for this sort of proposal, when can noise start? At 7 a.m.? Don't mean to put people on the spot, but.
Yeah, I
Yes,
don't
I am.
recall off the top of my head what the noise
Because
bylaw
I've,
terms are.
I think it's 7, but for industrial equipment, I'm wondering what time, like Monday to Friday, or for that matter, the weekend, when does it end?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this proposal, I mean, the TUP, the bulk of the activity on these 3 properties will be employee parking. There will be some equipment storage,
Right.
but the construction will be occurring on the Eptide property down the street. So in terms of the activity on this site, it's really people coming and parking. At some point, if they're using the equipment, they'll transfer it to the other site and then back again at the end of the day. But this particular site won't see it compared to the TUP council considered previously for the prefabricated wall assembly on the Shorncliffe property. That has a much higher level of activity than will occur on this subject area.
Sure, but it's also a much bigger piece of property with relatively noisy highway going by it.
Yep.
You okay, follow up on that, or you're okay for now?
Okay, for now, I'm going to propose an amendment to,
Great, but, okay, Councillor Bell?
Through the chair, one of the questions, and I'm not through the chair or whether,
Yep.
whether you can answer, but my question is, on page 20 is the driveways 1 to 2, drive 1, 2, 3, et cetera. So just looking at where this temporary use space is going to be. Currently, as I can see, there are still people living in these small houses. Is that correct?
I think occasionally,
there are.
yes.
So, and certainly in driveway 4, I know that somebody living there. So as this goes up, what's going to happen with these people? Are they going to be displaced? We approve this?
Mr. Hall?
No one is proposed to be displaced. The property owner has an active rezoning application for these 3 properties plus a 4th one. And they're the same developer that's working on the Ebb Tide rental project. So they're using this property as staging to support their construction on the other property. But nobody is proposed to be displaced from the existing dwellings.
So they're gonna basically build this on that property, that piece of property, this temporary unit,
Mm.
but these people are gonna be able to stay there
No,
at the same
Sorry,
time.
Councillor Bell, this is a temporary use permit for the equipment and the vehicles.
But
There's
still-
no building.
But okay, but
Just
they're
fence.
still gonna be parking in that area and so
Yes.
on.
Yes,
But nobody's gonna be displaced as a result of that. Okay, thank you.
that's, yes. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks
Great,
for that
thank you.
clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you to the chair. Just on that point, I was noticing on the plan on page, I think it's 19 of 31 says that the area will be projected staff housing. So I don't know how they won't be displaced if there's going to be staff housing. That seems to contradict that. I was also wondering
I
if,
think it's already staff that's living there.
is it
Yes.
staff that's living there for
Yes.
this development?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. Also, I wanted to ask if there is a cost that we are charging for the temporary use permit. You know,
Is there-
for a STR, you would have to pay a cost.
Is there- yeah,
So-
is there a
There's
fee?
a application fee of $1,800. We also require a $10,000 security taken as part of the permit to ensure that the site is sort of remediated back to its original condition at the end of the permit.
And I'm just concerned also a question with the saying that the use of lots 19, 20, and 21 will not delay the project that is coming forward for rezoning there, which is, you know, important in terms of providing quite a bit of housing. So I find it interesting that this temporary use, which could be up to 3 years, would not be delaying that project. You could clarify that, thank you.
I don't think we could speculate on what the builder is proposing, but have you had anything you can share with us?
Only that, I mean, it's the same developer involved in both. So, you know, they're still working through their rezoning application for this site. So there's no immediate development plans in the next year or two that would be approved for that site.
Is the
And-
building permit been issued for the other?
Yes.
Yes, so they're ready to go, which is why this is before us.
It's just to follow up, maybe we should postpone that review of that rezoning then, because it's really not in the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Inkster?
Yeah, this is a second TUP in a couple of weeks. I've not seen, in my many years, previously I don't think I'd seen 2 of this nature, and now we're seeing 2 in 2 weeks. I hope we don't become the land of TUPs. My question was the same in reference to the property. I mean, is this an indication that that particular proposal, I thought it was a good proposal with a lot of units and housing. Clearly, it's gonna be 2 to 3 years before they even begin. I mean, I think it's a fair question with that property
Mhm.
because this council worked through a lot of discussion with the proponent and we made a number of suggestions, and it's one of those things that I think it looked good. It would look good for Seashelt. It sets a standard for what could be done in some corner lots in Seashelt. So I just asked the same question. I'm really confused by that, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, this this TUP and the back and forth at the intersection they need to do there. It's not wall construction, but, you know, it's their own land.
It's parking.
Pardon? Yeah.
It's parking.
Parking
Yeah.
and walking across and that. I've seen other things in Seashell happening where people have had to be on-street parking in roads that aren't wide enough. So this may be a good solution, but I just hope that that particular proposal that we saw with all the nice windows and that comes soon. Thanks.
Understood.
Yeah.
I think we certainly I'd share your view. Please, Councillor Rowe.
To Councillor Inkster's point, you're seeing two TUPs so closely because we're finally starting to build something. And these are some much needed rental units that have been on the books for a long time with nothing related to the district of Seashell. So I see this as an opportunity to decrease the impact on that Eptide neighborhood by having obviously some property to store equipment and parking. I just want to clarify just what was said at the initial part through you, Chair. So these three properties, there'll be lighting, parking, storage. The noise will be occurring at the building site like any other building site on the coast.
Right.
Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I think the difference, see you, Councillor Toth, this is, the way I've read this is primarily parking, and it occurs to me, if they could park anywhere in theory, you know, it just happens to be across the street. So if they're ready to go on this development, if we can help them in some way to expedite this development, I'm sure they'll find parking somewhere else for their employees in the short term. So I don't have a concern myself, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. And yeah, I don't have a concern with the timeline on this either because, you know, they still have to finish their rezoning process. They'll have to go through the development permit approvals. They'll have to go through a building permit approval. They'll have to go through an archaeological permit and assessment. They'll have to align the contractors that they need. And, you know, who knows when a contractor is available to start work on that site. So that part doesn't bother me. If I look on page 16 of the agenda package, bullet number 6, though, says that it's valid for a 1-year period. But staff report mentioned 2 years. So I just want to make sure that
Good.
if this is boilerplate, if this is anything we need to change. Thanks.
Very good. I did have that highlighted as well, so we're on. You see that, Mr. Hall, Mr. Allen? Top of page 16, references item 6, represents what?
Yeah, that should be 2 years.
So that's 2 years. Okay. If I may, while we're on that page, I'm curious, why do we feel it necessary to get a security bond on a property we don't own? You know, to make sure that they return it to the condition it's in. And so what? It's their property. I get to remediate perhaps the sidewalks or, you know, the public property, but it struck me as curious why that should be between the applicant and the owner of this property, I would think.
It's something that we've been doing for a number of years now with our development permits, basically to ensure the conditions are met through the development permitting process, and we've just adapted that to the temporary use permit in a similar manner to ensure that they kind of adhere to the conditions and that there's we have that security if there's any issues at the end, if they're deciding not to clean up the property and we want to be able to go in and do something. So it's.
But we wouldn't be able to go in and clean up the property because it's private property.
Well, because we've issued a permit, we are able to use the security to go in and deal with issues because of that permitting authority to remediate the site if we choose to.
Really? Well, yeah, on this point, yeah, I see you, Councilman. Is this on
Yeah,
that point?
sure.
Please.
Well, I'm assuming that their staff is encouraging them to go back to the to the, how it looks now. Although it is an older site with older homes, but I'm assuming the wish would be, I mean, if you look at the site, you could knock down the hedges to create more parking. Right? That's
Yes.
what they could do. And it's not necessarily something that's preferable, I'm assuming. And they could probably make some changes to the structure of the housing, the houses that are there to create more parking. So I'm assuming that's why staff's doing it, in order to get ahead of what could be considered, because of its use, an unsightly premise in the end. I'm assuming that's why they would do that, just because, like I said, you could take down the hedges, you could make alterations to the buildings to create more equipment and parking use on a site that was previously residential.
Yeah, it just strikes me as weird. We hope they'll redevelop, in which case all these structures become irrelevant. So if the two parties, to me, it's unnecessary for our sake. But if the applicant's okay, it's certainly not something for me to interfere with. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I am concerned that it is it will become an unsightly property. And honestly, we are actually under the gun to get housing built. So I think we're just sort of allowing this developer to drag their heels by using one site and another. I mean, in Toronto, you would do a huge tower, maybe 70 stories high, manage without anywhere to park or build, but it gets done. So I think if there's a will, I mean, there should be an easy way to get this done without requiring the use of these lots for organizing materials, honestly. Also, I'm a little concerned that one or the other might be a contaminated site. Even with older homes and that, they've often had old oil tanks, and that's an extra step to deal with that contamination. And I'm not really sure, even with a temporary use permit, having people in there, it is sort of a form of light zoning, in a way, a temporary use permit, to allow this kind of new use go on without any concern for possible contamination on the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Please, Councilor Shepherd.
I don't know if this is the appropriate stage, but I am in support of the TUP. I just would propose an amendment that the TUP include, I think it's, the proper language is dark sky provisions.
How does staff think about that? Yeah? Yes, Councilor Inkster, is that a second? Yes, okay. So do we have prescriptive, do you need us to be staff? Would add a point somewhere in the UP document itself on page 15 and 16?
I think we understand the direction of what to include in the TUP.
Okay. Because then this is different than, like, the concerns about noise are covered under our bylaw. Okay. Okay, so everybody comfortable with that the TUP would include reference to imposing or applying best practices for dark sky, whatever that final word is in that sentence. Okay, any other questions? I had one. Nobody else does. The traffic coming out of this, because some of it is construction equipment. It isn't just employee parking. And that's a pretty awkward turn. You come out right at the corner and you're gonna have to turn a hard right and then a hard left. Any concerns, or they posed that they're gonna, I guess it's once a day, kind of once in the morning and once in the evening, to be fair. Answering my own question.
Yeah, I mean, at this time, there's no concerns about that, given the level of activity that would be occurring.
Right.
Compared with the other TUP application that we dealt with, that we required a traffic management plan to deal with the.
Right, with the Shorncliffe. Yes,
Yeah.
good point. Thank you. Okay, so we have an amendment to vote on first. And then we go to the amended motion. Ready for the question? All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Councilor McLaughlin. The motion carries, so then we go to the motion as amended. And everybody clear on what we're voting on? All in favor? Opposed? Counselor McLaughlin. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I go to number 6.2. 6.1, sorry. Wishful thinking. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I think we'll let you give us a overview before we seek a motion or motions.
Okay, so we have this rezoning application for the property on Reef Road that council has previously seen. There were a number of requirements for the applicant and staff to address before coming back for second reading and scheduling the public hearing. So the applicant went away and they provided a traffic assessment to address the trip generation issue. The OCP has a policy around a number of new vehicle trips added during the peak hour. And so the trip generation report is used to assess whether or not they're above or below that threshold. The report determined that they didn't exceed that threshold, so they're not required to do a more detailed traffic impact assessment. There was also a requirement for a flood hazard risk assessment, which has been done. That has a number of minor recommendations, and the applicants will have to do some further investigation to consider potential berms or other works that they might need to do as part of their development. Council had previously raised a number of issues from the last meeting, so we've touched on those here in terms of ownership or management of the riparian and environmentally sensitive areas. So staff have basically determined that it would be reasonable for the applicant to own those. They would be strata-owned property based on the current proposal, and there would be a restrictive covenant on title that would govern or restrict the use and basically help manage and protect those areas for the riparian or environmental uses only, and not allow any buildings or structures or trails, etc. So the district would not own those lands. They would be strata-owned property, but restricted with a covenant on title.
As a result, they'd be responsible for whatever
Yeah,
happens
so-
in that area.
Yep, the strata would then be responsible to manage those lands based on the professional assessments. There is also, there was a issue raised around planning issues for the larger area in terms of Shoal Way, Lighthouse, Reef Road area. So I've attached a conceptual road network, which I'll share on my screen for discussion in a minute. And that just basically kind of highlights a proposed road network for the area to give council an idea of what that might look like. And then there was a third point around all the provincial policy and regulatory changes. And because this proposal has a higher density, the provincial small-scale multi-unit housing regulations would not apply to this property. So it's not applicable in that sense.
Can I just offer you, I don't think it's that they don't apply, it's that the proposal meets or exceeds the SMU requirements.
Yes, in that sense, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we want it to apply, is what I'm hearing from the various reports, or the various recommendations. Thanks, keep going.
Okay, so on screen here, this is just a conceptual diagram. You basically have Shoal Way up here, Reef Road, and Lighthouse. So in future, the Reef Road property for this rezoning is right here. As we've talked about previously, Marine Way would not continue through the property due to a number of constraints and primarily the creek and other issues. So the road access to this property would just be a dead-end road serving only this development. However, there's another development proposal here, the townhouse one the council has previously seen, that would extend Link Street through the property, which eventually would link up with Lighthouse. There'd be an extension of Fairway Avenue coming through that property, running through the neighboring property, and connecting with Link Street. Lighthouse would be a major connection heading south from Shoal Way. Now, this area is quite steep, and obviously there's a creek to be crossed. So whether or not this existing alignment, as we have current road dedications, would be feasible, or if we would need to swing it through our property across the creek, is subject to further investigation. But basically, the intent for Lighthouse to continue south and ultimately, curve around based on the contours and link up with an extension of Trail Avenue coming west. And that allows the possibility of Reeves Road extending east and linking up with that connection there. So Lighthouse meeting up with Trail being a fairly significant new connection for this area, providing links and fairway as local connections through that. And then this area being a further development site. This property, and this property are all owned by the same company. They haven't submitted an application, but they have hired some consultants to start doing some initial site exploration, environmental, archaeological, et cetera, and floated some concepts.
And what are the green lines?
The green is kind of indicating, we obviously have the Cook Creek here. There's another creek tributary running through here. So based on some of the information we've received from the consultants for this property conglomeration, there are sort of environmental areas here and here. And one thing we've suggested to them is to provide that kind of linkage here in terms of wildlife corridor, potentially the opportunity for some trails, but the idea that this is likely not developable for environmental reasons, but the areas around it would be potentially the focus there.
Maybe while you're on there, do you have a question, Councillor McLaughlin, about this page? About the map?
Well, it relates to the map, yeah. I just think that given the complexity of the properties, Cook Creek being a Seashell Nation, or, cultural significance, we've heard their comments before on some reports that I think the consultant should actually do some little neighborhood planning here. And also with the amount of development here, also a previous owner saying that they want to build a hotel. Like I don't know, or I don't have enough information to really make any kind of intelligent, supportive view on this. And so this is where I think that absolutely we need to have some neighborhood planning done and some infrastructure capacity issues addressed, because I mean, all of this just sounds very chaotic and piecemeal, and I just don't think that's does the potentially a new neighborhood any justice at all. So yeah, this plan, I was trying to figure it out today, and I really don't feel we're being informed of, what we need to know to go forward making an intelligent planning-based decision at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Inkster, you had your hand up.
Just a question through to staff, and kind of wish Mr. Dillon was here tonight, but Cook Creek, is that the creek that we had a problem with at that road a month or two ago?
Mhm.
Okay.
So you need to look carefully, because I had this question on another page where the map doesn't show. It's page 28. If council wants to, maybe we can go to that, Mr. Hall. Because I'm going to follow up on yours, Councillor Inkster. The creek does go close. You're able to 2 pages more if you. No, 2 pages more. That's why. Can you just? I know. Oh, thought you'd have, okay. Next, I think the next one. Keep going the other way. I think, or beg your pardon. Yeah. It's after the bylaw.
Right there.
There. So what's not really visible there's part of the creek in that larger lot. But then Councillor Inkster, they actually drew it on my version, because the creek comes very close to this property, but is not part of this property. So the culvert that failed is technically, I guess it's just a bit north of, on the R of Reef Road. And it crosses and down, actually onto the property just above the Marine Way label. So in the context of this project, I don't think it's a concern. But with the other, there's a lot of impact on neighboring properties.
Just some latitude here, if I may. So we're at second reading tonight. That's what we're doing?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Because I just I have to go take a look now, so at this, because of the riparian issues and the water issues and the flooding issues and the erosion that can occur. So I'll just have to.
Okay.
I'm okay. I like what they've done here. I just gotta go take a look at this riparian zone. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mhm. Other things, folks? Councillor McLaughlin?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I would like to make a motion that we do not give second reading tonight to this.
Okay.
We just heard that,
Before you speak
yeah.
on that, we need to,
Yeah.
procedures, I've got to look for a seconder. So is there a second?
I think defer with some, design going on, the review of the environmental issues, maybe more First Nations consultation again, because we know it's Cook Creek. And also the school board, I think they really need to know what is planned overall here. Maybe somewhere there should be additional land put towards the school or something. I don't know, but I know that having reviewed their capital plan myself, the most recent one, which is like last year, they're pretty much at capacity at all their schools, and they, they're projecting steady state, but really this is not steady state. This is not business as usual. We do want to provide housing, but we want to provide quality housing with good respect to the natural environment, which is in many ways why we live here, is to enjoy that beautiful environment. Thank you.
So the question was, your motion is to defer second reading. And I'll look for a seconder. Am I correct?
I mean,
That's your
how
motion?
long can we defer? Will defer allow enough time to actually do something and get
That's
something?
up to you in terms of making a motion. You can,
Defer how long? I would say 6 months at least.
okay, so it can
Yeah.
be time, it can be based on different benchmarks if you prefer.
Yeah, and the benchmarks are environmental and school and.
But it has to be
yeah.
measurable to be effective. So if I may, I think you decide, is it a motion to defer for 6 months?
I think if we defer for 6 months, given the consultants are looking into it anyway, they need to do more work. It would be a good breather to let them do perhaps some community planning and do some more calling up the school district and doing these things on their own instead of us having to recirculate it again.
All right, so we're talking to it, but so the motion is to defer second reading for 6 months.
Yeah, I think if we
Okay,
start with that,
that's
that's a
good.
pretty good
Great.
start.
Okay, so then I need to look and see if we have a seconder. Okay, no seconder, the motion, we move on. Okay, council. Did I miss a hand? I'm sorry. Okay, I will, make reference. I hope everybody picked up on the the road map, the conceptual map of the roads. Council, Mr. Hall mentioned, we actually own a piece of property on Lighthouse. I knew that would get your attention. So, you see Mr. Hall's cursor. That's owned by the District of Sechelt. So, wanted to make sure everybody heard that comment. It's used as a storage yard, junkyard, I believe. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay.
Got that
Yes, please, Counselor Shepherd.
Just to follow up on a question of Councillor Inkster's, so the recent problem with the culvert at Cook Creek, would this development involve work by the developer on improving that culvert?
No, that's a separate project. This development does not contribute to that. And maybe to go back to the conceptual road network and the neighborhood plan piece, I mean, definitely there's no question for this larger area, there's neighborhood planning that needs to be done. This road network is just shown in response to council comments from the last meeting to kind of give an indication of what, you know, at least connectivity in this area might look like based on existing and future road dedications. There's no question that further environmental, archaeological, and other investigation is required to support neighborhood planning in terms of what land uses and densities are actually possible in this area. But this is meant to just provide a skeleton of where the roads could go, obviously subject to further work.
Please.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. My concern with the development, and I think I've voted for most projects that have come before council, is the environmental sensitivity of the part of the parcel. So just to help me understand, the developer's done studies on runoff as a result of what's being built. Correct? And I guess what standards do what standards of runoff or sort of engineering rules do they use when they're calculating flows that result from the development? Or go ahead.
I mean, our subdivision and development bylaw number 430 has standards around the design and calculation for managing stormwater and drainage issues. They will also have to do additional work with the province for dealing with the environmental areas that they're proposing to widen channels or change channels. Like there's a whole process they'll need to go through with the province to address the environmental issues and protected areas on the site. But certainly our bylaw applies in terms of the kinds of calculations they have to do for managing stormwater on site.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I got that. I guess my concern is, it's following up on Councillor McLaughlin's point, is that with climate increasingly being variable, I just wonder how relevant those standards are, whether they should be, we should be more conservative, but I can't offer anything more specific. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, if I could just follow up on that. There is the lead for a new neighborhood standard, which would have, it does have a lot of issues regarding site sedimentation and runoff and good design in terms of landscaping. And I don't see why they don't pursue that. We could ask them to do that just to set a higher bar. Thank you.
I think we're getting into something that follows, I stand to be corrected, but follows later in the process. And, staff are hearing the concerns. I'm sure the developer and owner are watching or will watch later. Like, I don't disagree with the concern expressed. I can speak from personal experience, though, that sometimes the more modern techniques are better than leaving nature to handle it. In terms of runoff and stuff, more effective than, in some cases at least. Councillor Inkster?
Yeah, when we look at the larger map up here, I see 3 water course designations with the name Cook Creek on them.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, there,
Right?
there, yet. So, yet.
It's a I see a
Yeah,
tributary.
Yet Cook Creek
Right.
is not.
Yeah.
Is not part of their plan, but there's 3 water courses connected to Cook Creek.
Right.
So it's a consideration.
Yes, I'm agreeing with the concern. I'm just saying, is this the time to not proceed or not signal, at least whatever council's will is, and then an intent to proceed, subject to Councillor Tough?
Thank you.
All on you.
I just wanted to note that at the bottom of page 21, there is a bullet point there under the flood hazard risk assessment that talks about a tributary of Cook Creek that would present a flooding hazard. And further investigation will be needed to determine solutions, e.g. creating a berm. I guess, you know, in terms of the zoning and moving forward, a lot of what I'm reading here, I voted against this last time for a number of reasons. I didn't think we were ready to move forward with it at that time. I'm assured by what I'm seeing here that there is work that has been done. There is more work that is going to be coming. I'm perfectly okay with us moving forward with second reading and scheduling that public hearing. So I'll move recommendations. Actually, I guess it's 1, 2, and 3.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Second, thanks. Okay, we can continue with any other concerns. For me, if I may, how big are the townhouses? And the question is really at the top of page 23, relates to the parking. I know it's a small reduction from 2 to 1.95, but these are, you know, there's no other place to park. It's not like we've got, so are these bigger units? Are they going to be 2-person units?
I might defer that question to the applicant's consultant in the audience. I think it's a mix of sizes, but if council wants to entertain.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Can you just answer and I'll repeat it, or is it? Right, so for the online, so it's a mix of 2 to 4 bedroom units. Okay, thank you. Okay, I just, again, I flagged that as a concern that where this is located, we'll have public transit, better public transit, we hope. So maybe that's enough, but and I'm getting hand signals. Yes, Mr. Shirley. Right. Okay, yeah. If, you're very good, you're arguing the other side of that. Councillor Bell?
I'm not sure if we're at the end of this discussion through the chair, but can we just recap what we need to come back to the table for the third reading? Because we've had a lot of discussion. We've had a lot of people.
What work is going to be done between
Yeah,
now and
just
third
want to
reading?
recap what's coming back next time. Have we made that clear? Because there's been a lot of concerns brought forward as well.
Yep.
So what are we leaving here? Like, what are we going, do we need anything further from the developer? Can you just recap that for me?
Mr. Hall, I mean, the resolutions contemplate that we would go to a public hearing, presumably with substantially this information. And that would, is there a rough timeline? Next month or two?
Yeah, I would anticipate potentially in April at the earliest.
Yeah, I mean, statutorily,
yeah.
it would be hard pressed to do much before the end of April at this
Yeah.
point, but yeah. So there's not a lot more work, I think, Councillor Bell, if that's what you're looking for, between now and third reading.
Thank you. Okay.
Subject to what comes out of the public hearing, of
Right.
course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, good chair. When we have public meetings or even with a public hearing, I'm just concerned that the public is not given much information. I mean, we've had just a public hearing where the public has said, we don't know what you're doing. We're confused. We need a lot more information. We need illustrations. We need to be able to ask questions. We need the planners to come to our community and meet with us and talk to us. And I just don't see that happening. And I don't think what I see here is enough for any member of the public to actually make a honest, knowledgeable comment on this development, because it just doesn't, you know, developers coming with whatever they care to show, which is what I see at presentations, instead of a wholesome planning review of the issues. You know, it's just not helpful. And to bring stuff to the public that is not really, you know, detailed and illustrative and informative is not really fair, I don't think.
So you're encouraging the developer and I guess staff to provide more detail, put the information out? Because I wanted to ask, is there any plan for any sort of public information session before a public hearing? Well, obviously. Sure, Mr. Shirley will. And the last. Good, okay. Right, and I do remember that, but we are, for all sorts of good reasons, 9 or 10 months down the road. So, Councilor McLaughlin's point, I take it that we want to make sure people know what's going on, and I'm sure you do. You want to have this a successful project, but there's no plan for any formal information sessions between now and the public hearing.
No.
Okay. And you'll notice I said formal, because there's always informal ways, and I'm sure the developer and the owner would be well advised to put out the good news story from your point of view, informally, or Facebook, or whatever else we have.
Yes.
Yes,
If I
please.
could just comment, I mean, often technical drawings are shown, like we have here, and plans that show street infrastructure. That's not really adequate for people to understand. And most people can't read technical drawings at all, and they're just baffled, and it's no wonder they don't show up, frankly. Thank you.
Okay, folks, other questions? Trying to. Okay, any other comments, something new?
Well, it is new. I would like the counselors to, I don't feel this is in the public interest, the way it's being proposed for the issues I've raised. And I would like to know why the other counselors believe this is in the public interest to continue ahead to a public hearing on this very environmentally sensitive site, and First Nations and students, or I don't see any park for kids. Yeah, why, how is this in public interest? I don't really see it being in public interest. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody care to comment? Councilor Rowe?
There's one thing that we have heard loud and clear in the last 5.5 years through data and people's stories, and trying to employ people on the Sunshine Coast and preparing our community to be in a situation where we have people that can take care of the most vulnerable people in our community, which in my opinion, and that of housing speakers that I've listened to, is the goal of a healthy community at its basis. This is a housing project like every other project that's come before us. I have a right to have a personal opinion that I see value in this project. I see it moving ahead in the right direction. I see our concerns being taken into account. I'm with Counselor Inkster at when you speak about Cook Creek, but I'm happy to move forward with second reading, and I'm not sure that I'm pleased at the demand for my opinion from a colleague. I will speak more often when I speak against. But as the record will show, I have not spoken against housing projects in general, and that will be the way that it stays until October 2026, at which point I won't run again and somebody else can fill it out and come and have the fun. So that's where I am. The end.
Thank you. Counselor Top?
Thank you. This is one of two projects that I've voted against in all of the time that I've been sitting here since 2018. And my voting against this in December 6th council meeting was related to some things that I felt were missing, but I was really on the fence at that time. And so when there's conversation about nobody knows what these things are going to look like, nobody knows enough information, the December 6th council meeting is a public agenda. In that public agenda, starting on page 60, are elevation renders of the project. You can see exactly what these buildings are going to look like. The fact that they're not dedicating a park with a playground, there's more assets that we have to maintain. I mean, Kinnickinnick sports fields are a block away. The Kinnickinnick trails are, well, 2 blocks away, whatever. You know, the elementary school's right there. The arena's right there. The bus route's right there. You can come downtown to Hackett Park if you need a big empty field. The site is really constrained because of the environmental concerns, which we did speak about in December. And the applicant is making efforts to ensure that the environmental areas are protected. If we want to turn the environmental areas into a park, that's a different conversation. But I spoke in December about being opposed to us taking on more assets that we had to maintain. And so this, for me, sorts out a really big question in that the developer, the Strata, is going to maintain ownership of that park area. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Counselor Inkster?
Yeah, I'm going to support this. I'm not, I've mentioned my concerns with the ecosystem issues that I consistently speak to. And I'm only speaking because other council members have spoken. I don't need to defend every decision that I make. That's between me and, I guess, the creator. But I'm going to be consistent and support housing, which I've been doing since I've been on this council. I've been supporting housing, especially this middle piece that we're needing to look at for, wow, since West Sechelt left of Nickerson. So I just need to continue to do that. The environmental pieces, I'm gonna vote at second here for it, and I'll just go look at the environmental pieces that I'm concerned about, and I'll have some conversations with staff. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Okay, any substantive points?
Yeah, I just have one thing I'd like to highlight is in January 2024, we're supposed to be working collaboratively with the regional district, the Sunshine Coast Growth Baseline Research Project. Phase 3 report was illustrated, and there's a lot of analysis in there in terms of how we're supposed to plan together. And there's like 11 recommendations of things that any project should incorporate in that report. And climate resilience mitigation, inclusive, accessible planning, Indigenous rights and heritage. I just don't feel that this neighborhood is being planned and is addressing this. And we are obligated, I think, to look at the mapping. There's a lot of mapping in there that shows where development should and should not be. And it doesn't really indicate that there, and we've had the water pressure issue come up. You know, I don't want to have to pay for infrastructure
Councilor
to do
McLaughlin,
that.
I asked you if there was something
Yeah,
substantive.
that is
I should
substantive.
have said new. So
And this
you-
is
you
new
will
because
know.
I don't
No,
believe
I
that,
believe
that
with-
most people have seen this, and this is what I'm going to use to guide me
With
going forward.
respect, I think you're saying
we
the
all
same
should be doing.
things. With respect, you're saying many of the same things you've said earlier in this discussion.
Well, this
So
backs me
so we're
up.
going to move
Yeah.
on.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, council? If you're not, if not, I will call the question, and I believe this is on page 21. And it's items 1, 2, and 3. All in favor? Opposed, Councillor McLaughlin, oops, and Councillor Shepherd. Okay. So we then go to the bylaw itself, which is, make sure I'm right, folks, but page 29. And this is the bylaw number 580. Am I in the right place?
27.
Thank you. I got, so bylaw number 492-36, 2023, page 27 and 28. Motion and second. Any discussion? One thing, and I'd like to see the creek on the page 28 when we come back to third. It's not it's a reference document. It's not going to the words, but I think it would help some of the concerns that people express to see the creek actually delineated on that map. But that doesn't affect my ability to vote on this motion. Okay. Yes, Mike, yeah.
In terms of parkland, and I know some council members are concerned about what we are looking after. I'm gonna predict what we're gonna see there. When that development all gets done, we're gonna see a passive park in the riparian zone in the green area. That's what we're gonna see.
Mhm.
So that means to those council members that are concerned about upkeep a passive park just means probably a trail network through the riparian zone that the community can use. That's just my prediction. Yeah.
Okay, then it's good to have
Well,
predictions.
no,
Yes.
well,
it's-
it's a
yeah,
big
yeah.
green area on
No,
the map, so.
No, but
Yeah.
there's a very limited
Well,
development opportunities within the riparian zone. I know.
well, it's a
Yeah.
green area. They may not do it, but there'll be trails in there. Because
Not
that's
by
what,
design. but-
well, it's just anyway,
Yes.
that's what we're gonna
So,
see in there is
thank you.
parkland that's maybe not designated. It's riparian. I'm just predicting it. It happens. Wakefield Creek is a good example. Go look.
Yep. Oh, I hear you. Okay, so we're voting on the bylaw number 580-08. So is this on that bylaw? What did I do? Did I do it again? 492-36.
Yeah. So this is an OCP amendment. Is it necessary to have an
No,
OC?
no, this is a bylaw. So,
Amend District
Yeah.
of Sechelt Official Community Plan Bylaw,
mhm,
Official Community Plan Bylaw, OCP.
yes.
So is it necessary to do this at this time, or can we not wait for another reading? I mean, this is my problem when we march ahead, then we're changing our OCP, and then we can't really go back. So this is why proceeding along, just saying it's okay, kind of ties our hands. And I think it's very premature.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question on second reading. All in favor? Opposed, Counselor Shepherd and McLaughlin are opposed. Motion carries. Now we'll go to page 29, which is bylaw number 580-08, 2023. And to the motion, somebody like to make a motion and seconded, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, Counselor Shepherd and McLaughlin are opposed, the motion carries. Thank you. All right, council, I think that brings us to item 6.2 on page 32. And how do we, oh, you're still here. How do you wish to proceed?
If council wishes, I can give a quick summary of what this bylaw amendment is intended. So as we've been dealing with the fire flow issues that the SCRD has identified through their recent water modeling update, we have been looking at ways to consider supporting applicants move through this issue where they potentially have challenges meeting the fire flow requirements. So basically, we have subdivision and development control bylaw number 430, which applies to all development within the district of Sechelt. It does include fire flow standards and requirements, so that's what applicants have to meet, and that's based on the Master Municipal Construction Documents, MMCD, and the Fire Underwriter Society Guide. The current bylaw references the 1991 guide, which is now at a 2020 edition. But in terms of a situation where an application maybe can't or doesn't currently meet the fire flow requirements, there's sort of two options that we're looking at as in terms of them applying for a development variance permit, which would come to council to consider varying the fire flow demand to the level where they're currently meeting it. What we're proposing here is to avoid potentially a number of development variance permit applications coming to council and amend the bylaw to delegate that authority to consider these types of variances to the approving officer for subdivision and the chief building official for building permits, where we have the SCRD would determine that the existing fire flow does not meet the required standard. If there's an ability to consider supporting an applicant to have a reduced fire flow. But the only way we'd support that is if they're doing something to reduce the required fire flow. So we're looking at situations where potentially the infrastructure improvements required to increase the available fire flows would be beyond the applicant's ability to feasibly pay for or construct. But they would have options to consider reducing the required fire flows at a building level. So when we're looking at potentially sprinklering buildings or using non-combustible construction, and at the subdivision stage, we would be looking at the potential to secure those measures through a restrictive covenant so that when a future property owner comes to build on a property, the covenant would potentially require them to sprinkle the building and or employ non-combustible construction. And both of those would have to be explored at the subdivision application stage to prove out their feasibility. So the bylaw amendment is really meant to delegate that authority to consider that kind of scenario to staff, while acknowledging at the same time this isn't meant to allow people just to proceed and ignore fire flow requirements, but as a way to provide a short-term option for people to address for existing development applications, knowing that obviously there'll have to be significant upgrades to the SCRD's water system over time.
Okay, thank you. I got a lot of questions on this. Anybody want to go first? Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I'm a little perplexed about this. It says to allow, on page 33, to allow developments to proceed that do not meet the required fire flows is not necessarily in alignment with sustainability and strategic plans in one sense. So to me, like, well, then that's really not such a great idea. You said in your own report. Then on the other hand, you want to give developers an option and to delegate it to the planning department, then we don't really see it, and then it goes to subdivision, we don't see that. And unfortunately, because it is water and it's so critical an issue, I think it should come to council. And, ultimately, we're the ones accountable. Council is. Staff can decide something and come and go to other places and we can be irate and want to sue staff, but staff are covered. Ultimately, staff will not be accountable. It's us as politicians that will be accountable. And this is such a critical water issue, and it requires planning and it requires collaboration with the RD. I don't think we should actually follow through with this at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Shepherd? Oh, sorry, I don't know who was first.
I'm wondering if anybody on council is a water fire flow engineer. Because staff come and go, but at a lesser rate than I would say that politicians come and go. And right now, I think, unless you all are hiding something from me, none of us are actually qualified to engineer fire flow systems for a project. Tell me I'm wrong.
Okay, I think the point isn't quite on that. There's a concept of sober second thought, which is what I would suggest you're proposing, Councillor McLaughlin, that when things come to council, they don't come looking for technical skill, they look for a sober second thought. To follow on that, maybe you answered the question in your verbal comments, but when I saw this, that we were going to, through this proposal, delegate to two people, the question that came to me is, what if you two don't agree? So you as the approving officer and the chief building official, and you both have to weigh in on this and you say yes and he says no.
Good question. I think the idea is that we're both making decisions on different application types. So there would be no
Yeah.
conflicting decision making. The approving officer makes the decision on the subdivision applications, obviously in consultation with engineering and building staff, but ultimately the subdivision decision is the approving officers alone, whereas a building permit decision doesn't involve the approving officer at all, and that's entirely a building inspector, building official
Right.
decision.
So that concerns me because I've read this very carefully and I didn't get that. So if I didn't get it in the staff report, I'm concerned if the bylaw, now, I haven't obviously read the bylaw with that in mind.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at page 35, in the proposed amendments, provision 2, we're proposing 2 additions to section 38(1), so a new A and B,
Mhm.
and that's where we've
Right.
kind of separated out
Right.
approving officer to make subdivision decisions versus B, building official addressing building permit applications.
Yeah, and that, I'm gonna echo Councillor Toth. This is where we get into the weeds, because I'm not just sure which, how you would decide who's responsible. So not to, we don't have to get into that detail, but tonight, but I just find this is a struggle to understand what I'm being asked to decide on, and to give 3 readings to this tonight, I can't support. Have we talked to follow Councillor Toth, have we followed up with fire flow experts or the fire department? We talked to the SCRD about this proposal. Mr. Allen.
Thank you. There's many questions there. I'll try to do my best. We were, the 3 of us, myself, Mr. Hall and Ms. Lee here, were at SCRD today, speaking with them, measuring how this works in relation to their recent bylaw amendment. They are also hosting a meeting with fire chiefs across the Sunshine Coast and will be providing the updated mapping to us as soon as possible. So we're all taking the appropriate steps to find a way to move forward here, respecting this topic and recognizing that ultimately it's the various applicants' civil engineering team who has to work with the water modeling to first provide the data. And then ultimately the decision point is made by one individual, but the decision process is much bigger than that. It involves myself and the Director of Engineering and the Director of Sustainable Engineering and the CAO in many cases to ensure we're making the right decision. Did I get most of your questions?
Have we talked to industry or fire flow people, or I guess you're going to talk to the fire department, or the SCRD is going to talk to the fire department?
Individual applicants have had their engineering teams, their civil engineers working toward designing fire flows, measuring and so forth. The FUS standards relate to the building code. The building code has a number of means in which you can get fire credits through size of building, sprinklers, fire pumps, type of construction, et cetera. So there's certain technicalities that will apply, and we overlook that. And when we're dealing with complex buildings and land subdivisions, there are civil engineering teams that are involved in applicants' proposals, and they provide that work, and then it is vetted through the water model.
Thank you. It's, yeah. This is just a lot to come all at once. It feels rushed and, yeah, I won't repeat myself. Counselor Bill?
Through the chair, and I'm just, so the current model is what? In terms of making these decisions, because I'm hearing now that SCRD is making some changes and you're having discussions with the fire department and so on. So what is the actual reason for wanting to make this change?
I guess the primary reason is where an applicant has, let's focus on a subdivision application. Somebody has determined through the SCRD's water model that their site, the existing fire flows do not meet the required standard. So if, say, a standard of 60 liters per second applies and they only have 40 liters per second available in the current water system area, they're obviously deficient. So where the SCRD might then determine through their modeling, there's $2 million worth of water infrastructure upgrades necessary to solve that for the development. You get into the issue of, is that even feasible for that development to do? If they're doing a 10-lot subdivision, can they afford the cost of doing that $2 million upgrade? Or is that something that, there could be a benefit to a larger area? There may be some opportunities to investigate other financing options, or recognizing that the larger issue might be an SCRD capital planning project exercise that we're getting into, the idea of a development variance permit, or through this proposed bylaw amendment, considering a variance to allow the application to proceed in advance of doing that infrastructure work, knowing that they've still be required to do and to secure measures to reduce their required fire flow. So when we're looking at the building side of things, if they do non-combustible construction, that they do enough through that, and that's also tied to the size of building, that they could reduce their required fire flow from 60 liters down to 40 liters per second. So if they build everything out of concrete and they're limited to a maximum size, that they've addressed that gap between existing fire flow and required fire flow. And that gets secured at the subdivision stage. Now, ideally, they would solve the problem at the water infrastructure level, but as a way of allowing applicants to proceed now, where they may have an application, maybe even at a servicing agreement stage, if we didn't want to say no to everything, to allow their ability to consider this variance approach that would still address the fire flow piece in advance of the SCRD having a clear capital plan to fix this issue across the district.
So to follow and clarify on that, if somebody's got an application, we looked at the ebb tide property, that's, I think, there's no problem with fire flow in the village.
No.
So how many applicants are you aware that this whole thing is gonna be a benefit to? Do we have any applications at the moment that are?
We do. There's certainly a lot of applications outside the downtown and village core areas, and in some of the not rural areas, but
But even
Davis Bay,
those-
Selma Park, even areas of West Seashelt, and further north. I mean, there are areas.
I mean, are we talking 3 or 4 or 30 or?
I mean, there's certainly at least half a dozen active applications, but then there would be development potential in those areas.
I
too,
get
but-
moving forward.
but-
The mine is more a question of timing. Like
Yeah.
I'm feeling really rushed by this. So, and I'm wondering what the impact is.
I guess we certainly have several applications that are directly impacted in that they're at a servicing agreement stage that we can't complete until this issue is resolved. So that's sort of if either we say no completely or we offer them an option to pursue a variance or through this bylaw, consider the variance at a staff level.
Right, there's two sort of separate issues, but I've got hands all over the place, so I'll come back to it. Counselor Bell, did you want to finish?
I've finished with a comment. So it sounds to me, it's quite a complex process. It's not very integrated, needs to be integrated to be more effective. I mean, we ended up in the recent situation where the fire flow thing was a big problem and developers came to us and so on. Now, knowing that it had to be upgraded and renewed, but still, this sounds to me like it could be a way of staying on top of that and that there's more discussion at the earlier stages rather than at a later stage, that things can be discussed and they could possibly look at options going forward rather than just being stopped at one point. That's just my thought on this, so.
Yeah, I think there's two things, is how do we solve the fire flow in the shorter term, medium term perhaps? And the other is who makes the final decision. So we're kind of getting both of these in this. Counselor Toth?
Thank you. The solving it in the medium term is going to revolve around the items that come out of the fire flow action plan, which is something that the regional district has funded to do this year. We know where the deficiencies are in the regional water system distribution. This will actually determine what's best. You know, what lines need to be upsized, what lines need to be looped, you know, what lines need a pump station built. That's work that's still to be determined this year. We had a very healthy conversation at the regional district about this topic last week. It ended up being almost 2 hours on this topic alone. And I'm still not sure that we made the right amendments at that table last week for the regional district's portion of things. But the wording that I see in front of me here today is far more sensible and obvious to me than what was adopted at the regional district. I heard something in Mr. Hall's comments there that I just wanted to confirm. Are we currently preventing projects from proceeding until we resolve this issue?
Good question.
Yes, there are active development applications that cannot proceed until either we have this bylaw amendment in place or they have to apply for a development variance permit.
Right. So they can do the DVP, which is they've always been able to do.
Yeah, but in terms of staff's recent discussions, we determined it was perhaps a more streamlined approach to amend the bylaw entirely to allow the
To
staff to be
delegate to
delegated
staff. Yes,
to do that.
that's why I'm making the distinction between the fire flow analysis and how we proceed or approve applications. Counselor Inkster?
Yeah, I was going through my bag there trying to find the fire flow maps that Councillor Toth and I have had in our possession, and I guess we can provide them to council. They're given to us, the regional district, a number of copies. It's as council knows, a hydrant by hydrant dot based on, it shows flow based on volume and by color coded. And from what I remember from that at this point, and I mentioned it at the time, is that West Sechelt has a couple of problem hydrants, as far as I can tell, flow, and it looks like it's around Gowland. And we have maybe a few on the inlet and maybe one or two going up near the arena area in the shores area with less flow. Staff would know better, but what it indicated is that the downtown core has good flow and most of West Sechelt has good flow. So if the proposals are in those areas, it would most likely work. It's just those two areas that I mentioned that they have to work on. The part that we need to be considerate of, and that's part of the regional district's plan, is that as they move forward and more hookups go onto the system, parts of West Sechelt have not as much flow. So that's what we need to consider. And I think it's mainly West Sechelt where the flow would change, and there wouldn't be as much flow. So that's part of the improvement plan that Councillor Toth referred to earlier. But as I said, there's just some weak areas that will need improvement, but there's decent flow in West Sechelt and there's decent flow and really good flow in downtown, which is where we need to have the water for fighting fires.
The red dots on that map, there's relatively few within the district.
Yeah, there's relatively few, red and yellow. The other thing I was going to mention too is that if we I'm sure I was looking through this just to double check. We're talking to the fire department, are we not? Obviously throughout this process? I mean, can you fight a fire with the water?
Have we-
So I'm just gonna leave that there. But I mentioned to a number of council members that, there's a little cheaty thing that we can do as council members is if you look at the top of a fire hydrant, it's green, good flow. Amber, decent flow, red, not so good a flow. And they're actually all color coded. So that when the firefighters go to those hydrants, they can quickly determine whether they need to either move it to a pump truck and or use the hydrant down the road, or if there's a problem. And that local department has color coded it, just so council knows and the community knows, and that tells you the green. I checked mine in my neighborhood, they're all green, I'm happy. But it's
all that
just an
matters.
indication.
All that matters.
Yeah,
Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I don't know how many of those applications you have are for single family homes, but again, the RD report I referred to says end single detached zoning and allow residential infill throughout established neighborhoods. So I mean, that is saying, you know, go where the flow is, go where there's room for infill. We need, you know, developers and builders to start focusing on that rather than building new homes and new subdivisions and building luxury homes, because they're not affordable. And if we want to have housing for workers and for lower income people, this is what we need to do. And so this is why this report is done, is to try and direct where development should be and why. And it's all mapped out on GIS, so it's all there for us. Thank you.
So, okay, because I actually brought up the map, so I'm not seeing very many red dots in Sechelt. So this comes back to my point of what's the rush? So I'm going to move a motion, an amended motion, because I'd like to see a lot more thought and time put into collaborating with the SCRD and with the other agencies, including the development community, on how this would work. So my motion is that we give first reading to this to allow staff and everybody to give, put more time in before it comes back for second and potentially third reading. So that is a motion. Is that a second?
second. When do you expect that to come back then?
I'm in staff's hands at, again, for the reasons I've said. I don't think this is, if a particular application is impacted, they can go with a development variance permit now. So they're not, it's a bit more of a process, but they're not stopped as such. It's just, so I don't see that it's all that critical to proceed in terms of those 3 or 4 projects that I think that may be impacted at the moment.
Okay, so just a question of you again, then introducing it. If I second it to introduce it, there's nothing to stop council from introducing second and third, correct? As a continuation.
I suppose, yes,
Yeah.
because my motion is to give first reading.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, please, Councillor Rowe.
Through you to you, what would you be looking specifically for staff to bring back? That's like, I totally want to support if my colleagues want more time with this, as long as we're clear with what it is we want, information we want back. I'm happy to proceed with it, but I also want to support those of you that feel the need for more time, but specifically, what would we be looking for?
No, because it would be just giving first reading, but my preamble to that is that I think we could benefit from having comments from the fire department, from as I said, the industry. We seem to be out of sync with the SCRD. They're trying to get some of the fire flow done, but you know, we're not sure exactly what that means. And so overall, the issue is we're not holding up many, if any, developments because of the DVP option. And So that's one thing. The second is I would like staff to, and I challenge our senior team to really assess how this would work in practice between now I understand that some go to the approving officer and some go to the chief building official. And I'd actually encourage our team to look at that, and say, is that really what's going to make this effective? Or would they if I was one of you folks, I'd actually prefer to bring it to council to get get council's buy-in rather than having the burden on an individual. So that's the preamble to, because I don't know how to put it into a motion. We do a lot of things here that people are, the staff are listening and taking it away, and we heard that earlier on Reef Road. Some of the comments that were made, they followed up with answers to them without it being in the motion a few months ago. Yes, Mr. Allen, I did see you.
Thank you. Decisions to be made by approving officer and chief building official or statutory decisions are not to be made at this table. They're not even to be made at this table. That's just how it's appointed under the act. That's Ian's role as the approving officer. It's not something to be debated. Just to provide clarity, the subdivision servicing bylaw has innumerable amounts of decisions that are delegated to staff through preparing servicing agreements. So there's nothing exceptional about that. I sign development permits for geotechnical hazards. I'm by no means a geotechnical expert, but we have a solid, sound identified process that relies upon professional advice and professional input. Long time ago, it was determined that it wasn't valuable use of council's time to bring every individual development permit to the council table, identify the criteria, identify who approves it, and delegate it to staff. And we're simply asking for one more addition to the subdivision servicing bylaw to enable that. The buyer underwriter study 2020 already allows for the chief building official to make those decisions. We just want to solidify that in our bylaw. The approving officer has a statutory. It's not to say that all applications will be approved regardless, but it just provides some clarity, some expectations for the people that have been knocking on our door daily since December is ultimately what our goal here is tonight. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And that is very telling. A lot of things have evolved from the December issue. And it's like we're trying to fix something that was unfortunate that it happened. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I thought we were supposed to be doing an overall review of the subdivision and development control bylaw. This is just a piece of it. And so I'm kind of disappointed because I would think we do need to do an overall review. And also we need to review our DCCs. So it seems to me this whole idea is to just kind of give developers a ability or whatever to move ahead, which, really we need to stop and take stock of what we're really doing. This council hasn't had a chance to do that. And also it's just giving yourself some more work to do, which you probably don't really need.
Speak to me, please.
Right.
Yes,
So
please.
they're busy. I'd rather they focus on getting the housing we have on the books done. So, and the SCRD is undertaking this, kind of out of the blue. It seems to have come up. I followed some of their meetings and I would like to see them just be able to logically go through with what they're doing. They seem to be focusing on it quite heavily, and it all has to do with the use of water as well. So we need to manage our water, not just, flow of water. So it's important that we let them take their time to do this and not jump ahead, which we have jumped ahead on numerous things, maybe with good intentions, but I think we can actually serve the public better by being more cautionary and cautious and step in step
Thank
with
you.
our partners. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councillor Top.
Thank you. The SCRD has already amended its bylaw. It's already done this work. It still has to develop the fire flow mitigation work, but in terms of the actual subdivision and development control standards, it's amended that bylaw already. The question that I had, which at the regional district, unfortunately, these standards apply to even something as simple as, Bob has 3 acres and wants to lot split it so that his kids have a parcel of their own to live on. These new well, these standards would apply to Bob trying to do his lot split. And so my question is the standards that we're looking at here, do they apply to simple lot splits, or is that where something like the authority to approve outside of development variance permit actually gives staff the approval to, approve that lot split? Because we don't need, like, as a council, we set overall policy. We don't need to see Bob's lot split development variance permit because he can't get 60 liters a second at the lot line. Thanks.
So, sure.
It would apply to all subdivisions, regardless of the number of lots. So the subdivision bylaw applies to all subdivision applications. It applies to development in general. So, the building code certainly has its own standards written into it, but in terms of subdivisions, it's not, there's no number of lots that would prevent somebody from being subject to these requirements.
Counselor Toth, can I ask, did that, the SCRD, how do they handle this process? Does it stick with the approving officer? Sorry,
I'm
no,
actually not sure
okay.
internally because it's all
Maybe I should be
engineering
asking.
and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
In the SCRD, and Ian is welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, they're not the approving officer. Modi is the approving officer for
Mhm.
subdivision in the regional district
Yep,
areas. So, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so the SCRD's recent bylaw amendment does not delegate authority to staff to make the kind of decision that we're proposing in our bylaw amendment. It would still require a development variance permit to the regional board to consider such an application. And yes, the province is the approving authority for subdivisions within the regional district area. Well, there's a provincial approving officer
mhm.
working for the Ministry of Transportation.
Yeah, okay, I leave that one alone. Okay. Let me see, yes, Councilor McCullough.
Just to follow up with that through the chair, so what about Gibson's? They're more similar to us. I guess they don't have as many people that with subdivision of lots for their kids, but
Oh, no, okay, so your question is, how do they handle fire flow issues? No, no. No. Go ahead, Mr. Hall.
I mean, Gibson's would have its own subdivision development bylaw.
Right.
Likely it would make reference to the same MMCD and FUS standards in some fashion, especially because they manage their own water system.
Okay, let's try and bring this to some sort of close.
I just have one question if I could.
Question?
Yes. Without first reading, would it be possible to still explore this more information for us and give us more consultation and background and come forward later? I don't see how first reading, it just ends up being a ball rolling down a hill that is hard to stop once you get it in there. Thank you.
All right, let me explain why I'm proposing first reading, because to me, if we were to say no to first reading, it's essentially saying no to the whole thing. That's the way I interpret when I give first reading, that there's enough there that I'm curious, but I'm not ready to proceed to a more complete answer. Yeah, so that's the distinction. I may still vote against it at second reading. I will tonight for the reasons I've said. But I don't want to imply to staff that I'm lacking in curiosity, that I want to know more. Well, I do want to know more before we move forward. Yes, please, Councillor Inkster.
Can I just call the question on this, please?
Yes. That's what I was going to do. so.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, you ready for the oh no, you called it, okay. So all in favor of first reading, because that's the motion. Okay, opposed? 1, 2, 3. Did you vote?
Well,
I didn't see you vote. So, but
No, no.
this is very curious and maybe a turn to the corporate officer, because if we do not give first reading, then it dies. Yes.
Yep.
So we, at the moment, everybody clear? Right. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm coming at it from a different angle in that I supported the motion that was currently on the floor because I want to give it at least first reading.
Yeah.
My question is, if we pass the motion to give it first reading, is there anything actually preventing a member of council from trying to introduce second reading when we
No.
get to the bylaw itself?
No.
Which
I agree. that you-
I
yeah.
wanted to clarify, because that's how it was in my head. I just wanted to make sure that every member of council understood that as well.
Okay,
Okay.
so
All right.
I want to be sure, maybe we can hold our votes again. Did you have something to add? No, okay. So can I do the vote again? All in favor of first reading? Okay, opposed, Councillor McLaughlin is opposed. Okay, so that is the motion to recommend that we do first reading. Okay. Okay, so council, anything else before we go to the bylaw?
Thank you. Depending on how many readings we give tonight, if council wants to get more information, I would really hope that somebody would move a motion with the specifics of what information they're looking for. Because if we don't make a motion for specifics, staff are not obliged to do anything other than bring a second reading at the next meeting. I just, from a process
Not obliged, but-
perspective.
Yeah, not obliged, but we've got a good relationship, but it's up to council.
I support Councillor Toth because I think it needs to be specific on what they need to bring back. Very helpful for them to know that.
Okay. So.
Is it clear to the staff what they need to bring back?
What, it's
Maybe
actually,
that's the question to ask.
okay. Councillor Inkster?
Well, if we're not specific, so that we can provide us with additional information to make additional. So that we can make additional decisions. Is that what I did? I guess it's been on a lot. So I'm gonna propose second, then I'm gonna bring it forward if we can't be specific in what we're
Well, no,
requiring of
okay.
staff.
Nobody said that. but,
Yeah.
Well,
no, Counselor Toth asked for it and nobody, Counselor Bell said that makes sense, but then it begets that somebody introduces and or says this is what the information we need.
okay, well, I'll try again. So what I'm looking for is input from the industry, I guess. Comments from the fire department. Better demonstration of how this ties in with the SCRD. So there's three things. Yes, if that's, yes. In terms of, that's why I tried to give it earlier and we'll formalize it in this way. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Was that, okay, motion carries anyways, yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't call out, did you see Councillors Toth, Rowe and McLaughlin? Okay, so those are by way of recommendations, so we can then go to the bylaw, which is 430-06-2024 on page 35. This is before us for first reading. Moved second. Any further discussion? All in about first reading.
Sure, I'm gonna support this, but I just wanted to be clear on a couple of things. I'm supporting first to move forward. I'm supporting your information request to move it forward. And I'm looking at this next piece to move it forward.
Okay,
let's continue. Just to be clear on what I'm doing here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm clear, but
Yeah.
okay, we'll go with so this is a motion to give first reading to the bylaw starting on page 35 of our package. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor McLaughlin opposed. The motion carries. Okay, Councillor Toth. Oops.
Thank you. I'd like to move second reading of bylaw number 430-06, 2024.
Okay. So how does that work? We gave first reading and we've asked for more information. So what are you anticipating?
I mean, at the end of the meeting, we're not giving it adoption yet. So that information will still come back before adoption.
And we'll have
If
one,
this-
your intention is that after this, if it's approved, you go for third reading.
That will be my intention.
Right.
Whether anybody supports that is a
Oh,
different
no,
story,
no,
but
I didn't say
yeah.
that. Okay. Okay, I don't see the benefit to any of us, but obviously that's up to the council, up to the will of council. I would like to see us have some time for that sober second thought that I've been referring to. So we have a motion seconded for second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Councilor McLaughlin and myself are opposed. The motion carries. Councilor Toff.
I would like to move third reading for bylaw number 430-06, 2024.
Seconded, yeah. Okay. I've said it all, so, okay, all in favor? Opposed, Councillor McLaughlin and myself opposed. Motion carries. What you doing, folks? Do we need 5-minute break, anybody? Hmm? I thought that's what we just did. We were doing them, we didn't, we. Yeah. So, everybody okay, or 5 minutes? Yeah, I certainly would welcome 5. Having sat here for 4 hours. So a motion to recess for 5 minutes. All in favor? Hey, can we reconvene at 8:58? So we are on page 37. And, yep, okay, everybody there? Page 37, the item 6.3. Mr. Allen, I guess.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council will note there are, in fact, two separate amendments to bylaw 520 here, business license bylaw. The first being for short-term rental accommodations pursuant to the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act of British Columbia. And then there's a second one respecting option for not-for-profit businesses, and corporate officer may take questions on that one. We'll start with the short-term rental accommodations. This is an amendment to the bylaw, which we established or amended back in October of 2022 and implemented starting in 2023 and carrying on into this year. And if you will, a supplement to the report we presented to council in November of last year. And so what we recommend here now is to follow suit with direction that the province is giving respecting renting out principal residences. So that would be amending the business license bylaw in some areas to remove reference to the temporary use permit, to remove reference to type 3, the unhosted short-term rental, which would then leave us with types 1 and types 2. We've made some other minor amendments as well. It is our expectation through the business bylaw, through operation and regulation of business, that if you are renting out your principal residence, that you would be there as the host. In the unlikely scenario that you're not there, you appoint a backup on-call person for staff and or bylaw officers to contact in your absence. And so we've thought about that thoroughly. And we have sought legal advice to look at the wording that we think is best fit and present that. And so we recommend the 3 readings at this time, which leaves us with the 3 possible council meetings to follow up, including May 1st, the day of the enforcement of the BC Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act. And so we were on a timeline, and we present these bylaws now, these amendments to the bylaws respecting short-term rentals, so that we can be ready for that May 1st date. Otherwise, just as an aside, we continue to go through our licensing program and have licensed somewhere in the range of 60 short-term rentals this year. We have a few that are pending, remaining under review. We do have a few that were denied, and operators will have the opportunity to come back with revised proposals to meet our bylaws, should they wish. And so it continues to be an all hands on deck team effort. We have a business license review committee, and they report back to me on occasion with questions, but it is going as well as we can. It's difficult and challenging, but we feel that these amendments to the bylaw may help us and meet provincial regulations that will take force May 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. 2 questions. I just wonder, how do you prevent someone from not always leaving someone else instead of the primary residence from being there? And also, what is a non-profit?
Let's stay with the short-term
Business
rental
license.
first. This
Yeah.
is one of the things, this should be 2 reports. Right?
Yeah, I'm
This
a little
is-
confused.
This
because
is, yeah, this is,
That would be interesting.
so let's keep our discussion for the moment to the part 1 being the short-term rental.
Right. And the question is, how do we ensure that the homeowner, the principal residence, is there at all times?
Or that they have somebody looking after it the whole time and they're not there and they actually aren't really residing there.
Right. As part of issuance of a business license, they would appoint a backup contact person, and we would have that on file for that license. So we would have 2 contact people. The intent certainly is it's your principal residence, you live there, you're renting out a room either in your dwelling or a suite or a cottage, but that you are there. But there's some reasonableness to this. Somebody may grocery shopping. They may have an unexpected emergency off the coast, but the intent is that you live there. It's your principal residence, you live there and you're renting out rooms.
Yeah, I know, but how do you, what if they're not? They have somebody saying that they're gone temporarily all the time. And so how do you follow up on that?
In some cases, we might receive complaints from neighbors saying, hey, this continues to be a party house. We don't see any evidence of anybody living there. Our bylaw officers will investigate. We are able to examine the way that operations are advertised. That's part of our scrutiny of approvals. And we do the best we can. There's approximately 70 in operation and with licenses. We're trying to carry on, figure out how many are operating without, and that'll be a big part of our 2024 program. Last year in 2023, we really started to implement it. And this year we'll get more into the fines for operations without license, operations outside of the parameters of license and so forth.
So it's hard to tell. It's basically the answer.
Correct.
Turn yours off and we'll let Councillor Bell go.
Mark?
Yeah.
There we go, through the chair. Yeah, I'm just looking at, again, page 38. I think the key wording is that, it's just here, to comply with the act, there are recommended changes to the business license. Okay, short-term rentals, just a minute, okay. We're within primary dwelling or accessory dwelling units on a property where the principal resident lives. And that's the key, I think, because I know in some cases there are people that this isn't their principal residence. And so they leave, they still rent it out, but then they may leave and go somewhere else on the coast to stay. And that these people are still in their house on their own. So I think that's the key thing. It has to be their principal residence. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so how does that get followed up?
Well, when applying for a business license, there's an attestation form. We can see declaration of documents that indicate that's your primary residence.
Right,
But
okay.
per Councillor McLaughlin's question, how do we know that they are in fact residing in their primary residence? And that's the next level of challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Which is a practical issue on all of this. The
Mhm.
enforcement of this, or what amounts to at most 60 units, is becoming, like I'm not going through my concerns from last year, but I'm going, and my question, Mr. Allen, what is the province going to do and what is it going to save us from doing? You know, we put a lot of time and effort into Granicus. I guess it's working, but not anywhere near as well as we would have liked. With the province coming in, does that mean we don't need Granicus? Do we not need the extra bylaw enforcement because the province is going to have their own short-term rental police force?
Those are all great questions, and I do have thought about the future of Granicus. The province is creating a database where municipalities across the province are assisting, and there was a questionnaire. We filled out some of our numbers and what our sample business licenses look like. They're still establishing that. They will be establishing an enforcement team. We're not sure how that'll work. But I'll liken that to the natural resource officer. There's an officer in the Powell River office who comes down, investigates natural resource infractions, in-stream creek work, Heritage Conservation Act, non-compliance and so forth. But they cover a broad region. Our bylaw officers are still involved in some of these tree cutting near creek and so forth. So I'm hopeful in the future, maybe later this year or into next year, that the provincial enforcement team might be a useful tool for us. But I don't think that it alleviates any significant work from our end, from our licensing team to our implementation and enforcement that follows. I think it'll supplement rather than replace.
Okay, thank you for now. Please, Councillor McLaughlin.
Just to follow up on that, couldn't you check to see if the applicants get their property tax credit, which they would have to be for their primary residence? That would be one way to confirm.
Correct. Yeah, the homeowner grant.
You check that?
Yes. Yeah.
That's
That's
kind
one
of
of the forms of documentation that can prove principal residency.
You do use
Yeah.
it though.
Yeah.
And so at the, again, on page 38, I want to ask the statement in the middle of the three bullets, return short-term rental units to long-term housing market. It's a laudable goal. Do we have any evidence that it's working? Long-term meaning, 1 year, 2 year? What we're all talking about, where it's subject to the rent, what's it called now, the rental residential tenancy?
Tenancy branch.
Yeah,
Yeah. I copy that straight from the provincial guidelines, so that's their mandate as well. I know we have talked about that here in this room, but that's the province's goal and mandate. I will say that I don't have stats to give you right now. Anecdotally, I hear various stories of longer term rental as well as long-term rental replacing previous short-term rentals. Yes, people have reported to us that they're no longer seeking business license because they're now renting long-term. We have had people comment like that, but we don't have the means to follow that up directly. CMHC does not provide direct rental statistics for Sechelt that are useful for us in that regard.
yeah. So I mean, last fall, we had 3 or 4 that had gone into the whatever workforce housing, medium-term rental, whatever the label is, but we haven't been able to identify any other like the real long-term.
I don't have statistics to give you.
Yeah, no, understood. So nothing has changed, unfortunately. Please.
Just through the chair to follow up on that. What about people who had an SCR and then they rent it out for a month or two, and then another month or two? Does that qualify as long-term rental? It's, usually it's ongoing. I haven't been a landlord for so, if ever, so I'm not really sure, but I have a feeling that that's what a lot of them have gone to. Instead of being short-term rental, they're kind of like medium-term rental, and they're kind of, who knows? It's a bit gray. Thank you.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And I think with that, it might be a trend that we'll see unfold in 2024, starting after May, when the provincial regulations apply across the province broadly. I think we'll see some provincial trends in that regard. But I can't answer with certainty tonight.
No, and in your defense, and we want that sort of housing for the locums and the workers, the month and 6 weeks. We need that sort of housing. So, we need long-term rentals. We need that kind of housing.
Well, if I could just follow up, it kind of relates to the use of hotels as well. I mean, hotels are being used sometimes for that kind of accommodations for construction workers, whatever, but unfortunately that's eating into our hotel space. And also it is in defiance of the bylaw, which is for people that are tourists, and obviously construction workers working on a job here are not tourists. So I think we need to be aware of what's going on and try and keep it tighter, because then we're not going to have hotels for people who want to come here and stay with their families. Thank you.
Well, I think we all agree we need more hotels.
Not necessarily. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Final, if I
Yeah,
may
please.
too.
Yes.
Just final, I'll freeze the lake on this one, but mainly there has been, a lot coming out about this and change and so on. And now if we look at this new regulation, I just would ask that there be another communication piece that comes out, just more or less saying, okay, this is what it looks like now. We've got a new regulation coming. Here's what it is. I think it's been a little difficult to navigate, some of the things in terms of this business. So I'm not sure what that looks like. Maybe just some public information piece that we could be right done on the website, but maybe just highlighting new or whatever it is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions on the short-term rental? Some of them are kind of a combination, but if not, I think we can move to the nonprofit business licensing segment. Yes, please. Counselor Todd.
Thank you. Knowing that business licensing requirements are different if you're running a home-based office where you don't expect to see clients versus a retail store, et cetera. If you expect to see clients, I know that, you know, we've got inspection requirements and life safety things that need to be supplied if you're gonna be seeing clients. So when we look at the nonprofit businesses, is this just a paper to be able to give them the opportunity to apply for grants or what they need to do? I know it mentions Sunshine Coast Tourism in here, but I imagine there are other organizations that could benefit from this. But are we taking on a lot of work to go and inspect the resource center or things like that that we may not have considered? Thank you.
Right. Oh. Hard enough.
I don't have the statistics on that on
Mm.
hand as to how many staff hours would be spent per year inspecting those types of organizations. My understanding from many of the organizations that we do have, they just operate as a society and they don't have a physical place that would need to be inspected, but we could certainly bring back that information for council.
Okay, I think that's, because obviously it costs us more time, more than $1 to issue a business license. So, please, Councillor.
Yeah,
McLaughlin.
further, through the chair, just further that, are there businesses that we expect a license that have been paying for licenses that are nonprofits, for instance, like is the Legion a nonprofit? Do they pay for license? I'm just, you know, trying to see if
Yeah,
some are already
that's
doing
right.
that, and then would it be fair to let this one have it for $1 when the other one's paying, I don't know, 200?
Yeah. Right? I don't think you have that at this point, so.
Something to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, oh, no, and listen, that's,
To be fair.
you know, I,
constant.
before, a
Consistent.
couple of days ago, I guess I said we had a big agenda, and this is the sort of thing where I struggle to make sure we're doing it right, especially when we don't have all the answers. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I'm okay with this. I don't even know what it costs us to do businesses licenses anymore unless we do inspections with technology nowadays. It might cost 50 cents, you know, with technology. So other than the business licenses that need inspections. So anyway, I'm supportive of this. And the other previous agenda item, I'm supportive of that as well.
Okay. So other comments, because I've got a couple of things. I'm curious how we define a nonprofit business.
The nonprofit business is defined in the bylaw amendment in provision 2A, where the definition is to be added to the business license bylaw that a nonprofit business means an organization recognized as a society in the province of British Columbia.
And as a person who had the misfortune of doing tax for a while, some years ago, that is not the term the CRA uses for very intentional reasons. If you're a business, you conventionally pay tax. So the CRA, for example, calls them nonprofit organizations. I would not apply for this because I don't want to expose myself to being accused of operating a business. So on a practical level, I don't like the terminology. The other piece of this is all to help, this has all come up, it appears to help Sunshine Coast Tourism apply for a grant. But they could have applied for it, if I remember correctly, with a letter saying we accept their, you know, their operating entity in Sechelt. So I'm just looking at this, we're creating a whole other level of administration and action and potential for bylaw inspections or compliance. And to what end? Other than, I mean, would you register? Do we expect, let me change gears a bit. Do we expect a local book club to register? What about a hockey team? You know, where's the line? And if we don't register, which case, why are we doing it at all? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I guess conversely, if the alternative is they come to council for a letter saying that they operate in our jurisdiction, are we prepared to start writing letters for book clubs that are going after grants that require them to have business licenses? I mean, in terms of hockey teams, I know we've done that, but, yeah, I guess convert, like, because that's the other option. Are we gonna have to start writing letters acknowledging these organizations if they're going after grants that are requiring business licenses for whatever reason?
But we've done that a lot for decades. You know, the Kiwanis, I mean, a Rotary looking for grants. So I just don't see this as helpful, and I worry that we're gonna end up with a whole lot of either non-compliance or somebody saying, I don't want to register, and now we're gonna be debating that. This, to me, is over the top, just for the sake of one application. So, yeah. Yes, please.
I just want to finish again with comment that I guess I really want to know what the pros and cons are. You know, what are the pros and cons on for a nonprofit to have a business license? What are the pros and cons for us, for the District of Sechelt? So I would like to request
So, all right, so what are the pros?
pros
for-
and what are the cons?
well, so maybe one, fine. Pros, cons?
And I don't need the answer tonight if it's something that we want to come back with. I'm kind of of the mindset as well. I'm very cognizant of the amount of work that the District of Sechelt staff has. So I would really want to know that there is a real benefit for this being done for the District of Sechelt. And also, and quite frankly, for the nonprofit as well. So I just don't feel that I have that information.
It's an interesting comment, because if you, yes, okay, I answered my own question, please.
Yeah, I thought that, I'm confused now. I thought that staff brought this forward because they wanted us to approve this, and that within their discussion amongst themselves of this particular proposal to come to council, that they determined that it was doable and it made sense.
Mm.
I thought that's why it's here.
I assume so.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be recommended if they hadn't, but,
Yeah.
we're doing our job to highlight, you know,
Well, I'm-
concerns for those who
Yeah,
have them.
and the concern was, that was brought up earlier, is when the question was asked, how much staff time you might think this take? It is difficult to answer that at this point. There's a lot of nonprofits. We have a lot of nonprofits, so. So that's just my concern, is there a real benefit for this, just to add more work for staff? So I'm putting that
Okay,
out there
good-
as a
good point.
flag.
And,
That's all.
you know, it occurs to me, we're doing this on the fly, I want to apply for a grant. So the first thing I do is apply for a $1 business license, so I can say I'm registered in the District of Sechelt. Then I get the letter, or then I can apply for a grant. It's really our role to qualify all these different groups just by virtue of them showing up, filling in a form and giving us $1. Councillor Inkster?
Yeah, yeah, good idea. Yeah, I still see nothing wrong with it. If they want to pay $1 and get a grant so that they can get external funding so that we don't necessarily have to give them that same amount, then I'm okay with that. I don't know what we're quibbling over.
We're quibbling about, or I'm quibbling about the amount of staff time, the additional, we need a whole new section of systems. How do we collect $1?
Yeah, but, okay, so, but why did staff bring this forward if in fact, like, where did that
Because
come from?
in here,
Yeah.
there was one application.
Yeah.
In here, there was one application that was looking for a grant.
Yeah.
And the grant apparently said that Do you have a business license?
Yeah, okay. So staff determined that they would have to create this bylaw that we would say yes to in order for them to facilitate that $1 business license for the
No,
group.
one application.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let's call the question.
That's fine.
What's that? I don't have the floor.
Oh, okay, can I introduce the three recommendations then on page 37, is it? Is
It
it?
is on page 37.
Yeah. I'll introduce it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Counselor Bell, Counselor McLaughlin, and myself opposed. Motion carries. Counselor McLaughlin? Oh. Okay, but so we now have, how do you wish to proceed, council? We've just given a recommendation to give 3 readings.
So there's two pieces in front of us. Do we need to do 3 sets of 1, 2, and 3?
Well, we do, if
Yeah.
that's the will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why there should have been 2 separate reports.
Well, that's fine. We'll just proceed.
I had some questions on the bylaw. Can you? It's late, but 2.6 to our corporate officer. I didn't understand the significance, of the change. It appears that we're just dropping the words "is submitted." If it's that important to warrant a change, I didn't understand the significance of that.
Your worship, it was just a word flow thing. It was just repeated wording.
Okay, so just grammar or whatever.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And is in 2.7, where essentially I'm thinking of back to my workforce housing. What are we doing to manage that? A bit of what I think Councillor McLaughlin was asking. We don't really know that they're out there. Somebody's doing that. So we're complaint based, I guess. Yeah. Okay. And 2.8 on the next page, 6D. An individual is appointed and able to fulfill the obligations. I guess that's defined in what? What are the obligations of the operator? Like in practice, it is defined somewhere. I'm trying to think if I was in that situation, I'd be asking Councillor McLaughlin to be my agent for the night. What am I asking?
Are you able to be on site? Are you able to get into the house
Within,
a reasonable period? Without having the bylaw in front of me, in
right,
layman's terms, are you able to back up and be at the house if need be? Or be there and sleep there?
because this goes to the compliance thing that
Mhm.
they say, yeah, sure, I can be there. It'll take me an hour and a half. I don't think that's the intent. And I worry that we're gonna get back into enforcement issues that are just, we're spinning our wheels. Because they're saying I'm available, we're saying, yeah, but you live in Egmont.
Right, but the point is that somebody's available as opposed to the principal resident not being on the Sunshine Coast, period. They at least have a backup. And so by meeting these points of the bylaw, when they apply for the business license, they're indicating they can and will do this.
Yes, I accept that, but it's the measurement and how do we know when they're out of compliance? I do, before we proceed, I would really encourage council, if you wish to proceed with this, I don't, that it be changed to the label, the terminology to nonprofit organization. That is up to council.
That's the other one.
I know, sorry, I do know it's in the other one, but I didn't know that we're on the first one.
So you've moved on from the first
No,
one?
no,
then?
no, I've made
Okay.
that. Yes, please, Counselor Toth.
I'd like to move first reading for bylaw number 520-7, 2024.
Which is on page 42. 41, beg your pardon. Okay, and there's a second I saw. Okay, your microphone, are you speaking or are you?
No, I was just.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, call a question, all in favor? I'm opposed. Okay. What does council wish to do? Yes, Counselor. Okay. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed. And
I'll move third.
okay, all in favor? And still opposed. Okay, we'll go to bylaw number 520-08, 2024. By the way, I just noticed the top of this page, does refer to nonprofit organizations, but are in the subheading. And yet we then, just curious. Oh, of course, that's the old bylaw. So we've changed. Hey, folks, how do you wish to proceed? Councilor McLaughlin?
Thank
you're-
you, through the chair. I was wondering if we could just change the reading of bylaw to say that they will be charged a license fee of $1 if required. So if for some reason they require it, they can say, we need that, here it is. But of course, I don't think 99% of them require it. So that might just give us a way to lately do this and give them what they need. I don't know what they were applying for. It seems like an exception, but that might be something we could do.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I've said my point that I'm worried that it does say that a license fee is required. So potentially your hockey team or your dragon boat team or something would need to register. Please.
If I might provide a point of clarification, Your Worship, it's only required for businesses who are having an exchange of goods, services for money to have a business license in the District of Sechelt. So societies that aren't collecting money for a service or goods that they're providing are not required to have a business license. In the situation where a nonprofit society is selling things, such as that's what the Sunshine Coast Tourism is doing at the Visitor Center. They're a nonprofit, but they're also selling goods or providing a service. And so that's a situation where, to be fair for all the other businesses that are operating in the District of Sechelt, at least we have a licensing process where they can access a lower rate to access the license option. In addition to that, many businesses require a business license from the municipality in order to be able to get insurance. So that would be one of the pros that helps them be able to do that. Currently, the town of Gibsons does have a nonprofit business license rate for those reasons as well. To speak to the previous question about the number of these licenses that we might be issuing, because the number of societies that are actually selling goods or services is minimal. My understanding is that the number of licenses that would be issued would be quite low. But as I said before, I would need to come back with those exact numbers for you.
Right. Thank you. Please.
Just a question of process. Was there a seconder on that? Because we're discussing it.
Don't even know that we got a first.
Okay.
I didn't ask her a motion.
Okay.
can I ask then to clarify, Ms. Polson, would the Coasters Car Club need to register to be licensed? Because they sell T-shirts and all kinds of things.
If they're selling goods and services as a business, then this would provide them with an opportunity to access that license for $1 instead of the 125.
But yeah, you see, I don't know, but I wouldn't think they're licensed at all right now. So we're obliging them to go through a process of getting licensed. It's not the dollar, nobody cares about that, but
Again, it would just depend on their status as an organization. If they are a business that files taxes, that is different than if
Yep.
they're just selling raffle tickets or doing other things that societies are permitted to do under provincial and federal legislation.
this, I guess I know too much about this. This is more complicated. The unintended consequences are what are worrying me. Councillor Inkster. Sure. Okay, any other discussion? You know, yeah, okay. I'd be interested in why people are not interested or not curious about some of what I've said, but that's up to you. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, through the chair. Just to follow the logic, like, even if you have an STR, you really should have a license, a business license. So that means you gotta think about, okay, the name of your business, okay, fine, and that you have to register it, and then you have to get a CRA business number, and then you can finally get a business license at your jurisdiction, and some of them might be Gibson's, Seashell, and whatever, like the Coaster Car Club, like how many licenses would they need? It does open up a bit of a can of worms, but I did notice at the visitor center that they are selling quite a bit of nice swag that I didn't know we had. A lot of it is Seashell logoed swag. And they're selling some nice T-shirts from different people. You know, they're making money from the sale of these T-shirts, and fair enough. So I don't know. I mean, this is sort of the way the world, I think, is sort of going, to help entrepreneurs who sell things.
But
And
that's entrepreneurs, that's not.
yeah, but we're doing
nonprofit
it,
business.
I know, but how does that work? Like, they're selling stuff from entrepreneurs in a nonprofit business setting. So it's getting confusing and muddy. But like, why can't they just get a regular business license? They're not that expensive anyway, honestly. If they need it, get it. If you don't need it, well,
Well, that's true, yeah. That's true, yeah. Sunshine Coast Tourism could have just applied for a business license and we wouldn't need this.
yeah.
Hmm.
So that's my thinking, just.
Hmm? Sorry.
That license was issued at the full price because this bylaw had not been adopted at that time. This
I know,
is
they
for,
could-
intended for future applications and particularly for the next year of licensing.
Yes, I understand that, but this is all, as I understand it, come up because of one situation, applying for a grant. So, council? There's nothing on the floor. There is. Did somebody second it? Did I ask her? Very good. Okay. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Councilors, can't even remember, Bell, McLaughlin, and myself opposed. Okay, that's first reading. Anything else? We'll move to, and we'll leave it at first reading. We'll go to item. Yes, item 7.1. Is that right? Mm-hmm.
I guess we made a motion to give 3 readings, so we better at least try and give 3 readings.
It doesn't say by when. We don't have to do it tonight.
I'm going to move second reading of bylaw 520-08, 2024.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? 2, 3. Or opposed, Counselor Bell, McLaughlin, and myself opposed. Yes, Counselor Shepherd.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Counselor opposed, Counselors Bell, McLaughlin, and myself opposed. Okay. I understand we have to get these minutes done. All right. Just looking at time and we've got minutes, we've got the SCRD and council reports and a couple of other things, so we need the minutes.
The minutes can always be deferred at council's discretion.
Sorry, I thought we needed them because of time sensitivity for our audit.
Ideally, we would have everything fully adopted by the time the audit completes, but documentation can be submitted later if necessary.
Okay, great, that's,
Are we proceeding then? I'll move adoption of the minutes.
well, no, that's my point, because we're gonna do it, then we've got to go through some questions and clarifications, so.
Did I not introduce all four then and for adoption and have a seconder and then ask for clarifications and corrections on all four sets?
It's just the amount of time. So do we need to do them tonight? I'm hearing we don't.
Oh, well, then defer them.
Yeah. Okay, great. Motion to defer the 7, 2, 3, and 4. Second. All in favor of deferral? Opposed?
Oh.
Counselor Toth opposed.
Yep.
No,
Oh, no. Oh, no.
he was in favor of
Yeah, if we could
deferral.
decide on defer, I'm moving it. We got to
Okay.
decide.
So, SCRD report. That's exactly.
Yawn.
I'll go then.
Chair,
This is
Chair
the-
recognizes the yawn. Yes, SCRD report, Counselor Inkster.
Just a couple of quick things. Counselor Toth will speak to the back and forth on the low issue, but it was voted on to move forward. Yeah, it was kind of like tonight. I wanted to do it at the beginning, but anyway, they did it eventually and it's done. And I just wanted to mention there's a heat plan that I'm trying to get to council, applying for some funding for extreme heat issues on this regional, within the communities on the regional district, in the regional district area. I think they just have to identify more cold zones and cold areas. And that's what I'll mention for tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Toth, anything to add?
Yeah, the only things I want to add to that, we got our first water supply update presentation from staff. It's published on the website, scrd.ca/water-updates. The good news is that between the end of February and the middle of March, when they did their measurements, the snowpack did increase from 30% of normal to 80% of normal. Snowpack, of course, doesn't really help us in August. It's really just about how late we start advancing through the stages, which is something I continue to struggle to get through to people. You know, we are a rain-dependent community, at least the Chapman water system. The only other thing I wanted to report on was that there was a archaeological contract award for universal water metering. So that'll be monitoring all of the pits when they dig to install meters. It was $681,000 and change. Of 4,388 pits, 1,837 of them will be monitored based on a low, moderate, and high risk of artifacts being found. So I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Thank you. About $400 a pit. Yeah. Oops, sorry, Bill's losing your Nashville. Okay, I'm gonna change it up and I'm gonna go first and we'll go down here and we'll bring it home with Counselor Hoth back to Counselor Rowe. And I'll try and keep it brief. Great turnout for the final chamber meeting. Counselor McLaughlin was in attendance, which was great. At a GMF council meeting, it's something for all of us to keep on top of. I hope you're on their list because there's all kinds of different options for funding, both for municipalities and other agencies. I know staff are watching it. The Seashell Arts Festival, please make a effort to go and see the Salish Sea presentation that is on from now until April 13th. And a bunch of young artists. It's a pretty spectacular demonstration of original art that they put on. Very impressed with the Seashell Seniors Activity Center. They had their AGM today, and what a dynamic group. Some of you are certainly qualified to belong. I think everybody is, but you gotta be 50 to vote. But they have really upped their game and they've got a great system now to attract people and how to pay and register and everything. Very happy that council was able to host a casual lunch with our Seashell neighbors, Lahebus, Lenora, and two of our councillors last week. And it was a real treat. A resident of Silverstone Care, the Trellis Seniors Center, gave me a tour of their building, and it's really impressive. And I hope council, you get a chance to get up and have a look. On a somewhat more challenging thing, councillors Rowe and Shepherd and I met with a number of residents living in the village around high tide, and yesterday to hear about the impacts on them. And I'm not blaming anyone for this situation, but I think I speak for the three of us that were there, that it was heartbreaking to hear the stories that are and the impact that it's having on the neighbors' quiet enjoyment and safety. So I think the one step that we can do, and I'm hoping we can arrange it, is with council support, is to get in front of Minister Callan and Minister of Housing again next month when we're in Victoria. Something has to be done, and hopefully we can show some leadership. It's again, it was heartbreaking. I'll leave Councillor Shepherd to talk about his airport development committee. And just a reminder to council, I'll be away from the 31st of March to the 6th in Oslo for the Nordic EV Summit. I've been invited to attend. This is a global best practices, battery production, charging solutions, and all kinds of interesting things, many of them coming from Europe and Asia, and they're quite different than what we do in the US and Canada. So, and apparently I'll be the only Canadian representative. What did I say? Europe then, right?
Yeah, thank you. Chair, I guess. I too went to Oslo in 1991. And it was winter time. It was a Winter Cities Conference, and I was there studying with a solar energy grant, Innovative Northern Housing, and I did my thesis on that. So very interesting kind of socialist place.
Mhm.
I think you'll have a different experience there in Canada somewhat. But at least it definitely was in 1991, more so, I think. I wandered down on Friday, down my street Spindrift, and I missed the senior center, although I do go there for the $10 fish and chips on Fridays, which draws people in to want to be members, and it's excellent. So I do frequent that. But I did go to the Art Center, Salish Sea's presentation on Friday, and I was there giving an environmental speech. The first I've heard you give one of those, so that's good. It was also based on the herring coming back, which is a good sign, and there's a beautiful video there you can watch by renowned videographers. And it was tastefully done in terms of trying to reflect the ecosystems, the fish and the sea lions, but also the fishermen and to balance the economy with nature and to, you know, have us all realize that that's hand in hand. And always probably will, but in a sustainable way, hopefully. What else did I do? Well, I went to the Chamber of Commerce, had my big chance to go to the golf course. It was a lovely day, of course, and nice luncheon, speeches. I could have written the speech for the mayor, but he had a speech written, and he also, of course, couldn't help but ad lib a bit because these are his pals at the chamber. So it was nice to see that he celebrated, and I look forward to see what the new chamber will be as well. That's primarily it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Inkster?
No, I'm good. It's late.
I'll be real quick. Yeah, it's
Mike.
Labor Council. I attended-
Donna?
What's that? Oh, Mike, sorry. I attended the Sunshine Coast Labor Council Women's Annual International Women's Day event on March 8th. Great event, celebrating women and the work they do. A lot of young people there, which was so great to see. And then I just want to flag one thing that I want to see. I want to see a public information session on Bill 44. I think that the community is very confused around what's happening or concerned. And I think it's something that we as the District of Sechelt should do, because there's just some of the biggest changes in regulation that we have seen in a long time. So I really want to flag that. I want to see a public information session. Just flag that.
From the province?
District of Sechelt. Yeah, staff, we'll put it together.
Everybody's comatose right now, so they're not responding. I think we'll take that up in Victoria. Okay, thank you. Counselor Tough.
Given that the clock's gonna run out on us in 10 minutes here without a motion to extend, I'm gonna hold my comments till the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Shepherd.
I attended the Airport Development Committee.
You chaired, come on, you chaired it. Oh, come on, it's a really dynamic group, and I want to compliment Counselor Shepherd. He, a bit of herding cats. But, making some progress, huh?
I'm
Counselor,
deferring.
Counselor Nashville.
I was in Nashville, and you spoke to the other things we've been involved in, so.
Okay, thank you. So that then brings us to the page 60. And this is the BC Farmers Market looking for a letter of support.
Also move that we write and send a letter of support.
So the
Support this
motion is to
program.
send a letter of support to the BC Minister of Health.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so then we go to the letter from the SCRD. And we don't know, what are you wanting to suggest, Counselor Todd?
Thank you. I'd like us to have a conversation on this not at 9:50 at night, so I'd actually like to refer this to the next committee of the whole.
Yes, good. So a motion to defer to committee of the whole on the 27th. Okay. And anything you want from staff? Okay. Okay.
And I'm supposed to chair that meeting, and I'm gonna have to declare a conflict on this, so I don't, there's no way I can.
Oh, right.
vote on- I've been
So-
screaming for this for
Yeah.
45 years. And I'm way too involved, way too closely tied to
Okay, but
issues.
that you can recuse yourself.
So
from
that,
this.
just a note, yeah.
Right. Well, it's only for it'd be only for this item, so that she'll be here. She
Anyway,
just has
sorry,
to
I
step
shouldn't have
away.
said anything.
Yeah. Don't worry. Yeah. Okay, so motion to defer, all in favor of deferral to the next cow. Carried. And with that, we have one item to release from closed and seconded. All in favor, release. Carried. And that brings us to the end. I thought you'd say that. All in favor? We are adjourned. See? See, that's the seniors.